Hey, what'd you think of Avatar?
Blue people one or the Bender one?
Way of Water.
And I assume you're asking about the disability representation and not the perspective that instead of distancing itself from the problematic white savior trope of the original, Way of Water feels like a wet dream for wannabe woke white people.
Right. Wait, what?
We can talk more about that second one later.
Yeah, disability. What are your thoughts on disability representation?
Well, you know me, with any of these conversations, I'm looking to add perspectives to the greater cultural discussions here. So remember that these are not the end-all, be-all of perspectives.
But it's important to look at things from multiple points of view.
Right. I like to look at representation from two perspectives. One is a stigma scale. How much stigma or harm does the representation cause? And the other is an equitability scale. So how much benefit beyond awareness does it add to cultural views on disability?
Okay, so you want to start with the good?
Sure. First, some minor spoilers. Way of Water has one character that is coded as having a disability, Kiri Sully, played by Sigourney Weaver.
What's coded?
Coded just means that the disability is explicitly stated in the storyline so that the audience isn't guessing that this might be a metaphor or something. It's clear.
Gotcha.
So Kiri Sully has a mysterious birth, and when she connects to the sacred water tree, she has a seizure and becomes unconscious underwater. Her family then brings her to safety, and the humans come and run tests, and they diagnose her with epilepsy.
Okay, yeah.
So I talked about this representation with my good friend Miles Levin, who is a mind-blowing screenwriter and overall amazing human. He has epilepsy, and beyond following his film Under the Lights, which goes into production soon and tells the story of a teenager with epilepsy, it's wonderful. He shared with me some great points on Way of Water, which I'll paraphrase. So in his opinion, the worst case examples for epilepsy in order are one, that they depict people having fun or being cool while making fun of seizures or epilepsy. Two, show incorrect depictions of a seizure and or incorrect first aid. Three, show the seizure in a light that inspires horror. Four, conflates epilepsy with other stigmas or negativity. So like epilepsy is caused by addiction, or epilepsy is caused by mental health issues, or epilepsy is a sign of a moral failing and makes you a villain, etc. And five, epilepsy is described as someone being possessed.
That's a good list.
In Avatar, the seizure is suspenseful, but not horrifying. The character is never blamed for her condition. They use a real medical term to describe it, and she's handled with respect by people she trusts. All good things.
So you think it's a pretty accurate portrayal, or?
I think some would criticize it for only showing a tonic-clonic seizure.
A what?
It used to be called grand mal. It's what we almost always see in movies as seizures, and the criticism is that there are 40 plus different types of seizures, and we almost exclusively see tonic-clonics represented.
It sounds like a valid critique.
I agree. We should see a better, more representative representation. But as Miles pointed out to me, we shouldn't be too quick to criticize an underrepresented condition for getting more representation than another.
That's a good point.
And what's more is that he says tonic-clonics are almost always inaccurately represented, so this representation is a way to gently introduce an audience to epilepsy with the type of seizure that the audience already has some awareness of, but where it's depicted in more accurate and equitable way, with the potential for more wider representation of epilepsy and seizures in the Avatar sequel.
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
And so you think The Way of Water is equitable?
I would say that the positives are that it created some more awareness of epilepsy in a non-harmful way so far.
Yeah, that's a big so far.
Yeah, I have some concerns with how they might handle it in the sequel. The whole equating epilepsy with some divine superpower that makes you an animal whisperer, maybe the chosen one, is certainly better than depicting it as demon possession, but it also isn't an accurate portrayal of disability.
Don't you think people get that supernatural element is fantasy?
Oh, absolutely, but on the flip side, Way of Water only depicts a singular seizure. It doesn't depict the reality of what life is like for many people with epilepsy.
Aren't they just normal people who have seizures?
I mean, yes, they're normal people, but having epilepsy can affect much more of your life than just having seizures. It literally affects your whole nervous system, which means it can affect attention, stamina, sleep, digestion, etc., and can be either mild or quite debilitating. But Way of Water didn't show any of that. Kiri's character just has one seizure where she has a spiritual awakening, and then suddenly she can command all of manner of life on Pandora, apparently.
Yeah, that's not representing how a disability works.
No, and again, they may do more with this in the sequel. We'll have to see. But for Way of Water, this depiction ties disability back to capitalism.
Okay, you lost me. Well,
it's a common trope to frame a disabled person's worth by what they can contribute to society, either in spite of or because of their disability.
I think that assessment, at least applied to Way of Water, is a pretty big stretch.
Is it? The Na'vi are depicted as the wholesome and good society, right?
To a point. I mean, they still have normal human Na'vi problems based on emotions like jealousy and suspicion and that kind of thing.
Right, but their society is built on balance with all living things.
And that's a perfect opportunity to showcase disability.
But do you see any Na'vi that aren't beautiful? You don't see any fat Na'vi, you don't see any old Na'vi, or do we see any disabled Na'vi?
Oh my gosh, like everyone fits a eugenicist mold of beauty and being in the prime of health. Like, I can't believe I didn't see that.
So the lack of representation of those people groups adds to the negative stigma towards those people groups. And then add to it that how the Water Tribe's chief reacts to the Sully family when noting their biological lack of evolved swimming tails and hands not shaped for paddling. Do you remember what he said to them? Don't bear the shame of not being useful. That's a capitalist point of view and is antithetical to many indigenous cultures around the globe.
But it resonates with a predominantly white capitalist audience with a subconscious eugenicist worldview.
Yup. Cameron could have done so much more if he had hired disabled consultants to help him craft this story to depict a society that wasn't ableist, or at least better integrate disability representation.
But he did hire at least one consultant, that deaf guy who invented the Na'vi sign language.
Yes, and how awesome is that? C.J. Jones did an amazing job, and his involvement has spurred more people getting an interest in learning sign language. That's a huge win.
Do I hear a but?
Well, this goes beyond my critique and more expresses what my heart aches to see in disability representation in film. Imagine what a mind-blowing story it could have been if the whole of the water people could, I don't know, only hear underwater, and above water they effectively were deaf and always used sign language, or something like that.
Oh wow, we could have seen what it would look like for an entire culture to be built around certain accommodations for a disability. And then through that, we would, one, see how much of our society's ableism is what actually disables people, and two, what our society should aspire to be like.
Right. So instead of even having just one deaf Na'vi character, much less cultural disability representation that could make a huge impact on our society, Cameron commissioned a language from a deaf person to be used by hearing aliens when underwater. Like, there's nothing wrong with that, and yay, I'm happy for that baby step in representation.
But also you see the potential of what a never-before-told story it could have been.
Never before told in the mainstream. And it's consistent with Hollywood, that when there is disability involvement, it's almost always been the bare minimum and kept to the fringes.
So what's your final rating?
On the stigma scale, 2 out of 10, it doesn't do much harm, but it does perpetuate some not so great attitudes. On the equitability scale, 1 out of 10. It raises some awareness and interest, but doesn't really address stigma or add new understandings. What do you think? Tell me in the comments. And also, you should think about checking out these epilepsy organizations. It's a great way to learn to become an even better ally.